Yes, hi, this is Super Dave. Good to be here again, once again. And this time we're going to talk about Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Trying to fix my cape here. Come on. Maybe we'll put it in like that. That way it stays. Anyway, I'm glad to be here again, and thank God. And once again, Superman is super. And I have to give this movie 4 stars. You might say, well, why? It's not as well made as the other ones, et cetera, et cetera. I think I have to look past this movie's weaknesses and look at this movie's heart. So let's start with the heart. Christopher Reeve, who had basically said, I won't do another Superman movie again after Superman 3, he wouldn't even appear in Supergirl. That's why Superman was on a mission to other worlds, other galaxies in Supergirl. He's back now. He's got the enthusiasm back. And basically, what this movie is about is, and this is something that the writers, Mark Rosenthal and Lawrence Connor, as well as Christopher Reeve, who came up with the story idea, mentioned, which is what happens if Superman can't save us? What happens if Superman doesn't intervene? Why doesn't Superman save us? And that's a question of theodicy. That's a question of what needs to be done um, in regard to that. Excuse me. Uh, so the movie opens with a a series of Russian astronauts and Superman saving them. Then we go to a scene in Smallville where Superman looks at the remaining energy that's in the crystal. Perhaps we last saw that in Superman 2, and there's still some remaining energy in there. And Lara says, This is my last gift to you. By the way, she's voiced by Susanna York. And Clark wants to sell the land to a real farmer in Smallville because both his parents have died before 3 and in between 2 and 3 or something like that. And basically, uh, he doesn't want to just have the land go in urban or suburban sprawl. But meanwhile, back at the Daily Planet, before we get to that, it's great to have Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor back as Lex Luthor. I think that he is such a comic wit. I think he's got perfect comic timing. As much as I love Richard Pryor's character, um, I think that Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor is just as good, just as good, and I really enjoy it. And Lex is let out of prison by his nephew Lenny, played by John Cryer. There's a hilarious scene. You have to see it. Again, spoiler alert, where a car goes flying. It's just very funny. But anyway, I did all these reviews back to back, so this is really the home stretch here. Uh, so anyway, uh, Superman slash Clark gets back to the Daily Planet, and he's found out that the Daily Planet has been taken over by a conglomerate named David Warfield, played by Sam Wanamaker, and his daughter, Lacey Warfield, played by Mariel Hemingway. It's great to have the original regulars back. I believe they're getting more screen time. Jackie Cooper's Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, played by Mark McClure, and Margot Kidder gets a full screen appearance this time as Lois Lane. And I really like the way that the Clark and Lois relationship is now like brother sister. They're beyond lovers. They're the best of friends, and I really find that an interesting dynamic in this movie. The other thing is um, Lacey Warfield, very much like Lana Lang in the previous movie, Superman 3, she has an interest in Clark, not in Superman. So I find that's an interesting dynamic. But anyway, The core central point of this movie is how the United States is second to none in the nuclear arms race. There is fear, there is concern over what happens if something goes wrong with nuclear weapons. In fact, excuse me, Christopher Reeve, hosted a documentary called "A Message to Our Parents," and it's a really powerful documentary about kids' fears of growing up in a nuclear age and what possibly can Superman do about it. Is the plot point that he had for Superman 4. And, and it's subtitled The Quest for Peace. And how do we deal with all that? So Superman kind of goes back and forth on it. Well, should I rid the world of nuclear weapons or not? Because a young boy named Jeremy writes him a letter saying, well, why can't you just get rid of all these weapons and everything will be okay? The world will be safe. And so he stands before the United Nations. Why? Because he's a true gentleman and says, effective immediately, I'm going to rid our planet of all nuclear weapons. And the crowds applaud. I think somebody like Tom Mankiewicz had a misunderstanding of Superman 4. Superman's a gentleman. He's not going to just do stuff without notifying the authorities. He renders to God what is God's, and he renders to Caesar's what is Caesar's. And Superman as a gentleman, and I think that that's really, really important. And I love seeing Superman as a gentleman. However, once all the missiles are thrown into the sun and kaboom, Lex Luthor has escaped from prison, wants to replenish the stockpile of nuclear weapons and go into business as a bad guy with the arms dealers. But he also wants to destroy Superman so that he can accomplish his plans and rearm the world. He wants to destroy Superman. So he builds this character named Nuclear Man. Now I'm talking about the final 90-minute theatrical cut of the movie. I'm not talking about the 134-minute cut, which I'll comment on a little bit later. But basically, he creates this Nuclear Man. He takes Superman's hair cells and puts it onto a nuclear missile. The missile's thrown into outer space, and behold, this Nuclear Man. Now, in one of the movie's most iconic scenes or funny scenes, there's a double date with Superman and Lois and Lacey and Clark. Of course, Clark and Superman can't be in the same place at the same time. So that's a really funny scene. There was also, I should mention earlier in the movie, a nice train sequence where Superman saves a train. But once Nuclear Man comes into being, Lex Luthor reveals himself again to Superman, and Superman must go to action. And we have, and again, the special effects are not as good as the previous movies, but I can see the heart of what they were going for, especially Christopher Reeve. They have a fight over the Great Wall of China. They have a fight over a volcano. They have the Statue of Liberty being displaced and almost thrown on millions of people. I mean, it's really spectacular action. I want to talk, and then basically the movie also. Let me get this clear here. The movie also gets to the point where Superman is vulnerable. Superman is sick, and he has to turn to that power source. But before he does that, there's a great scene where Lois Lane comes and talks with Clark and says, well, if Superman really is in trouble, then there are a few things I'd like to tell him. To tell him that I love him, that, I've always cherished the time we spent together. No matter how few moments I saw him for, it always made me happy. And to tell him again that I love him and that I will always love him. And he says, well, Lois, wherever he is, he would want to thank you. He would want to thank you. Very touching scene. Then Kal-El Clark has the green crystal and is ready to take on Nuclear Man again. And the movie wraps up with a fight on the moon, and Nuclear Man is thrown into like a power station and lights up all these buildings. Again, Lex is in trouble. Uh, I love the scene where Superman flies down and gives a speech to the world and says, "Good morning. Um, thank you. Well, we've come under the brink of war and found a fragile peace. I wish I could all give you peace the way that I see it, because when you really look at it, it's just one world." And I'll talk about the extended scenes and stuff in a minute. But he said, "There will be peace when the people of the world want it so badly that their governments will have no choice but to give it to them. I wish you could all see the earth the way that I see it, because when you really look at it, it's just one world." And from there, he catches Lex Luthor and Lenny. Lenny goes to Boys Town and to be rehabilitated, corrected. And Lex Luthor goes back to the quarry pit, the jail pit. And I do have to mention some of the financial dynamics that I think hurt this movie. And again, I'm giving it 4 stars because it still has Christopher Reeve's heart all over this picture. Um, they did not have the money for the front projection or the Zoptic flying. It was all done blue screen, although there was some live wire shots where takeoffs and landings, that sort of thing. But Golan and Globus, they had promised they were going to spend like 36 or $40 million or $30 million on the movie, something like that. And the budget got cut down to 17 million. Yet Christopher Reeve, he was a real sport, even though he knew the movie was quote unquote falling apart around him. He stuck to and believed in the project. In the production, he believed in the character. The other thing, unfortunately, as a result of that, many of the special effects do not look as good, but I see what they were going for. It has a great concept, but it's a little bit weak on execution. Again, not Christopher Reeve's fault. It's, they did the best with what they had. Golan and Globus, they were used to a business model of spending maybe $1 million on each picture and hoping that one or two will hit big and they make a big profit. They weren't used to these big multi-million-dollar productions. And so I think what they should have done, and even Globus has admitted this, Yoram Globus, and he worked with Menachem Golan, that they really should have put all of their efforts into Superman 4. And unfortunately, as the movie hit production, they just simply kept cutting the budget and cutting the budget and cutting the budget. And it shows in the special effects. I mean, you have some of the same flying scenes coming in and out, all that sort of thing. So, it looks compromised. And yet it still does not rob the movie of its heart, of its humor, of its heroism. I still really love this picture. The other thing, it was directed by Sidney J. Furie. I think he does a very competent job, does a very good job with the film. I don't think it's his fault either. Um, Also, we got to give credit where credit is due. Christopher Reeve came up with the story idea. He also did second unit direction on this. He unofficially did second unit flying unit on Superman 3, but this time it's official. The moon sequence where he fights Nuclear Man on the moon, that was all done by Christopher Reeve. And we had a couple other second unit directors, David Lane and Harrison Ellenshaw. Ellenshaw was involved with the Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. So, we had a good team working here. They just weren't given the tools that they needed for this to come off properly. The other thing that hurt the movie really badly was it had negative test screenings, so that's right, 44 minutes of the movie or 45 minutes of the movie got cut out. So there was originally a first Nuclear Man, There was a failed prototype that showed that Lex Luthor wasn't perfect. Also, the ending of the movie made much more sense, where there was a whole threat of nuclear war and this whole buildup. And when Nuclear Man flies down and says, "Where is the woman?" and Superman's like, "Give it up, you'll never find her." How does he know what woman he's talking about? Is he a mind reader or something? Or does he see Nuclear Man reading the paper? So the movie really got an axe on too many scenes. But I'm guessing that motivation was partly financial, which is if we can get as many showings in on one day as we can, then, you know, what can I say? They wanted to salvage the movie. There is a Restore Superman 4 Facebook page that I'm a strong supporter of. And many fans are hoping that we will again see the scenes properly inserted into the movie. In fact, most of the deleted scenes I have seen. There is a scene in a Metro Club that has not yet been released, but there are still images from it. So there are so many wonderful, heartfelt things I could say about this movie. I see past its flaws. I see what they were going for. And now let me take the chance to rank the movies that I saw. Supergirl, I don't even know where to rank that. It's not even a full thumbs up. Santa Claus the movie is number 12 spot for me. And then we go all the way down to Superman 4 is number 4. Superman the movie or Superman 1 is number 3. Superman 2, the Lester version, the theatrical cut, is number 2, and Superman 3 is number 1. I don't know where to place the Donner cut, but it wouldn't be in the top 20, but it would still get 4 stars. So all these movies get 4 stars except Supergirl, which gets 2.5. And I should mention that Supergirl has various different versions too, like a 124-minute version, which I own. The U.S. theatrical version was an hour and 45 minutes. There was a 138-minute cut that I haven't seen, or at least not fully seen. So anyway, when you're up for a Superman marathon, go for it and sit through these movies, and you'll really enjoy them. And watch them chronologically. I think it's really worth it to see Superman, Superman 2, Superman 3. If you want a time waster, see Supergirl, and then see Superman for the Quest for Peace. As a separate genre, you could see Santa Claus the movie in between there. So, you can see how the flying has progressed. And I'm not a real big fan of the newer Superman pictures. A lot of them I haven't seen. There was the DC Super Pets. I love that one. But we'll talk more about those other movies another time. But I'm glad I was able to do this stream tonight. And God bless all of you, and all of you, God bless you all. And please stay super. Take care. Thanks. Bye.